Good afternoon. Nice to see you all. How about we all come down the front a bit more rather than spreading out all over the place? Any ideas? No? Well done, thank you. Awesome. Okay, so I'm Mike Gamble, Head of Strategy at Talenthouse Media Foundry, which will mean probably nothing to most of you. In a previous life, I ran Epic Games, Unreal Engine licensing over here in Europe. And some of you may know me from that, but my experiences at Epic and previously in the games industry have kind of really informed and been the genesis for what we're doing at Media Foundry. And what that really boils down to is working with independent developers and giving independent developers the opportunities, skills, and freedom to make the most of their products without having to compromise particularly, or take bad deals, or just not have the skills available to them. And this was where, you know, the kind of Media Foundry genesis was. It came about almost by random when I met Maya, the founder of Talenthouse, and we were talking, and she told me about this platform called Talenthouse, which has nothing to do with games, but everything to do with enabling creators in other media, virtually every other media, to be successful and to put them in front of large brands and to basically allow them to build careers. And we sort of noodled about it, and I was like, well, are you doing anything in games? And she was like, no. And I was like, really? You know, you've got the biggest entertainment market globally and you're not doing anything. So that was where we started talking. So, Media Foundry, nice, what the fuck is it? Well, thank you, Kate, for the messaging. So, what Media Foundry is, a little bit tricky to describe, but it's a central point through which all entertainment media developers can cooperate, share resources, share IP, license IP, etc. So this isn't just a games initiative. We're starting with games because we're here and because that's where my background largely lies, but it covers film and TV, covers music, books, board games, entertainment, you know, media as a whole. And again, what we want to do and what we feel is really necessary is, again, for a small developer, doesn't matter whether they are a games developer or a TV, film, you know, a film student or whatever, you want to be able to make the most of the IP that you have and that you've created out of love, frankly, because that's what it is, and without the sort of friction and without the hassle, or with much less hassle of, you know, trying to deal with big companies, trying to work out who you talk to, let alone where you talk to them. And the core of it is to allow developers to exploit their IP. And exploit is an emotive word, but I think in this case, the exploitation is on the right side of the equation rather than the wrong side of the equation. Okay, so who are Talenthouse? I mean, you've probably almost certainly never heard of them. I hadn't have done until a year and a half ago. But it turns out that they've got a 14 million strong creator community in traditional arts, videography, photography. Almost certainly a large number of those artists are also working within our medium. But the great thing about this community is they're not just professionals. There are lots of agencies and professionals in there, but also there's a guy who's really good at art, but perhaps is an accountant. But he gets a route to market, or the way can interact with brands and make, you know, pitch against proposals. And taking that model and the tech that Talenthouse has built behind in order to allow that to happen is what's really going to allow us to build Media Foundry, and has allowed us to build Media Foundry. Media Foundry, still, what is it? So again, this is, in lots of ways, this is the culmination of my 30 years in the games industry. Throughout my throughout my career, I've been massively fortunate to work with companies like Epic and Microsoft and THQ and Sega. And I've always been drawn to the independent end of the development. So, I've never been particularly interested when I've had to work with the large publishers, but when I've had to work with small developers, I have enjoyed working with small developers. Good example at the front here, Bendik from Snowcastle. It's great because you're suddenly talking to people who have a passion and are building their dream, and to be able to help that and to move that along is a wonderful thing. Now, within our industry, it's well documented. There's issues for small developers. You have to make that balance between, do I take the money from a publisher but lose the creative control? Do I take an investor that is going to take a huge chunk of my equity? Or do I bootstrap it, but then I'm not going to be able to pay for marketing and the discoverability becomes a problem? So there's these horrible, well, it's not even a triangle, it's probably a tetrahedron or something, of all of these points, which all move kind of independently. And so what we're saying is, this isn't a developer good, publisher bad, or developer good, investor bad. This is, as a developer, what we hope to be able to do is to provide you with the skills and resources you don't have in-house, which can bring your product, up to the next level, which is a horrible, horrible phrase, but which then allows you to have a much more equitable discussion. So you might decide you want to self-publish. That's great. It means your product is better placed to self-publish. You have a marketing campaign in place. You can help address discoverability. But equally well, it means that if you want to talk to a publisher, you're talking on a sort of a more of a peer-to-peer level, because if you're not asking for money, you're basically asking for distribution, and you're much more in control of that conversation. Of course, it's almost certainly not going to work talking to Activision or EA, but certainly, there's scale here. And our target audience is independent developers. So we're talking, 6 guys up to 15 or so. We're not talking about big studios. We're talking about guys who have a passion, have a skill, but cannot afford to have, to build out an enormous studio. So what is Media Foundry for games developers? We're launching with a free hub. It's a free resource. It's to build community, and it's to introduce you to us. It contains basically a whole bunch of sticky information. Editorial content will launch with 10 pieces of editorial exploring games development for noobs and for, that's a really disrespectful sort of phrase, isn't it? For new independent developers, right through to experienced guys. There'll be something within the editorial. We have a tone of voice which is authoritative, but a little bit, slightly witty, slightly maybe not snarky, but a little bit. We have an opinion. This isn't a news site. This is a place to go for insightful commentary on what's happening in games, and more importantly, games development. We have a twice yearly market research by a guy called Sean Dromgold at Some Research. And again, this will be delivered by video, but we'll cover areas as, overall market overview, trends, so at the moment, what's really interesting is, we've had the pandemic and games playing and games usage has grown, well, it hasn't grown as it turns out, it shot up. But actually, one of the pieces of information that's coming out of the market research right now is actually games spending and games playing have dipped down to 2019 levels. So the kind of growth that we would have predicted from 2018, 2019 through 2020, etc., has actually, that line hasn't really changed. We've had a massive spike, but in reality, that was due to circumstance, and now people are going back to, playing football, cricket, drinking, whatever they do. But that's not to say the future isn't bright, because the trend is still up. It's just, we haven't suddenly worked out, the magic formula that makes everyone play games, unless we inflict chemical and biological warfare on them, so that might work. With a community and social, but also we've got this a game stats tool, we're calling it Furnace. But basically what that is worked awesome. It's a way of scraping Steam. It's a Steam data interrogator. You can choose your tags, choose your genres, narrow it down. So as a developer, if you're thinking, right, I've got an RTS science fiction RTS, which I'm going to launch in 2023. Who are my competitors? What am I up against? What's been the previous public reaction to that kind of a game? And so you can interrogate Steam essentially, and then the sort of level of detail we'll get down to. Yes, awesome. So it's this sort of stuff. It's number of players, the tags which it falls under, when it was released, what media is out there, what the reviews were like, what DLC. So it's a pretty complete picture of who your potential competitors are, which should then allow you as a developer to think smart, think about when you're going to release your title, who you're up against, and why you're different is a good question always. And this is completely free. It comes with the free hub. Now the free hub launches to the public on the 15th of November. And it's not behind an account sign up, it's not behind a paywall or anything. This is literally just, this is goodness, this is information. Come read stuff, come join us as a community, start to understand and believe in our approach to games development. The rest of Media Foundry for Games is a series of other hubs that cover the major, I suppose, bits of the life cycle in the development of a game. So counterintuitively, we'll start with the BizDev hub because intuitively that's where you start before you ever even, maybe even start your game. Counterintuitively, that won't actually launch till Q3 next year. But anyway, and the reason that's going to take the longest to develop and really get up running is that it has a lot of elements which are kind of outside of games development per se. So it's financial relationships, it's licensing relationships, links with engine providers. There's a couple in front there, I think. That sort of thing. But what it will do, so it will provide routes to project funding through partners. It provides licensing ops for IP, because remember, this is part of an ecosystem. So you may well find that you've got a board game guy who's looking for a way to create that IP within video games. We can matchmake to a developer, or a developer might be interested. What we may also find is we have a developer who's within the ecosystem who already has a game which matches quite closely and can essentially be reskinned, and hence more successful because the addition of an IP that has already got some traction. Licensing your own IP across other media. Music licensing, because that's always a thing. And again, in the spirit of Talenthouse, which is always kind of an ethical approach to creators and their creations, we're hooking up with a number of different routes to license music. Some of that is traditional, a back catalogue, Warner Chappelle, etc. But a bigger part of it will, I think, be new artists, original music, or even original music for games, because as is becoming very, very clear, one way to get ears on new music is via games. Music in games is consumed way more than music in film, music in TV, even music on the radio, I think. So if you get a sticky track on a good game, you're already ahead of it. There'll be legal services, and then a much more detailed competitor analysis part of it, which is much more bespoke and based around what your title is and where it sits in the market, etc. when it releases, where it is. And finally, an element of virtual team recruitment, which again sits back very closely with Talenthouse's core technologies and core specialisms, because that's essentially what they do by going out to the 14 million community. Production hub, chronologically in games, production is right, launches Q2. And again, it's a bunch of services. So it's a design brief section, which fits again with Talenthouse strengths and technology. So it's character design, narrative design, storyboarding, level design, white boxing, concept art, anything within the pure arts is within our gift, to find the right people for your project. And what you can do as a developer is, it's not a case, you can essentially set a test brief that says, right, I want somebody to design this character based on these, these parameters. And that test case can be put out, it can either be put out to the whole community, or it can be put out to a select kind of NDA bit of the community. And then as the developer, you can choose which approach suits you best, or maybe none of them, and we go a different route. So it's all about being able to harness community and this massive pool of awesome developers who are not strictly in the games industry. Some of them will be, but some of them won't be. Then there's production services, which is altogether kind of more boring part of it all, but it's project management, budget management, first-party submission and advice, online store selection and referral. Kind of one way of looking at this is almost like middleware. Like you buy an engine because it does 75% of the boring hard work for you, which allows you you can concentrate on creative. What we're solving here is a similar thing. You no longer, if you're one of 6 guys and you created your own studio because you want to make a cool game, you really don't want to be a QA manager because that's not your core strength. You want to play to your core strengths and bring in those areas that you are weak. And then the far part of the production HUD is tech services. Again, much more, the nitty-gritty of games development, the stuff which is kind of hard and takes a lot of work, but you don't necessarily have the skills in-house already. So it's development QA throughout the project, either management or referral, or management and referral. Likewise, localization. It's getting a project localized from day one, or built in such a way that it can be localized. Increases your market penetration opportunities, but depressingly, lots of small games developers don't consider it until late in the day, and there's often decisions that have been made which make it very difficult to localize at that point. Engine and selection and advice, referral and knowledge base. We've got some in-house talent with that stuff. However, what I will say is, as a platform, Media Foundry is gaming platform agnostic, technology agnostic. It's about making the right recommendations against the project. So if a project is, the right choice of engine for a project is Unreal, then it's Unreal. If it's Unity, it's Unity. Who knows? It might be CryEngine once in a while. You never know. But the whole point of this is we're becoming an agnostic and trusted source of data, recommendation, and services. We're not parochial. We are diverse. We're across the entire world, and we'll make the right recommendation for your project, not based on anything other than what's best for your project. And then we'll build out a database CodeDev directory. Because of the first question that developers always ask is, do you know another developer that can help with the project? It's just, that's the way it goes. And then the release hub, which is the last thing in chronological development, but the first thing we're actually releasing because it fits with the current strengths and technology we have in-house, is the release hub. Release hub is all basically about marketing and getting your project in front of people, helping to solve the discoverability problem or ease. I mean, nothing's going to solve it, frankly, but it gives you a better fighting chance. Too often I've seen games which are absolutely beautiful, fantastically artistic, really interesting gameplay mechanics that have released and disappeared off the face of the planet because there just is no marketing. They've spent all the money developing the games. They've mortgaged their houses. They've done everything right in terms of this, but forgotten or maybe just not realized, or I'm not sure what the exact problem is, that there's a world beyond creating a great game. Quite often there seems to be this attitude that it's build it and they will come, which is complete bollocks, really, because of once in a million that happens. The rest of the time it really doesn't happen, and that's your mortgage and your all your money up the spout. So marketing. So pre-launch, 6 to 8 months out, they'll a marketing health check, basically just see if there's anything been done already, what your thoughts have been. Briefs hosted within Talenthouse, within our traditional community, to create teaser campaign materials, viral material, or potential viral. No one can press the viral button, but materials that can help go viral. Social media, all this kind of stuff. But hand in hand with that is also actually establishing the developer as a corporate presence. Well, corporate, that's a bit of a big word for it, but actually as a professional entity within our industry, you know, and operating in a professional way. And actually the corporate B2B bit is particularly important when you're then approaching, well, publishers and investors and, you know, people that are not kind of bought into your vision in the way that you are. Because what's so easy, again, in games development is you get blinkered. You know, you've got your game, you've got your idea, and it becomes almost impossible to understand why everybody doesn't get it. Because of your, you know, of course it's brilliant. I mean, it's a bit like this, actually, to be honest. And then at launch, so game launch support across social media, influencers campaigns, preview days, video content, the stuff which then just gives you that edge, that gives you that little bit of extra presence. Okay, so how is all this delivered? And it sure as hell ain't for free. It's, you know, a reasonable question. So it can be delivered in really any number of ways, but it's deliverable in packages. So you could buy just the BizDev Hub if that's what you want, you know, the BizDev package, the production or the release, you could buy all three. Or if you just want, you know, competitor analysis, you can buy that. If you want storyboarding, you can buy that. You know, so there's various different ways of cutting and slicing. But if you want, you know, essentially if you want to buy end-to-end game development support, there's a price for that, etc. Now, we're not releasing pricing quite yet because we're not releasing the first commercial hub until Q1 next year, but our pricing will be public. It's not going to be anything hidden. And there'll be lots of different ways of cutting and dicing. And what's absolutely fascinating and came to me as a light bulb moment when we were working out the costings for all this and what this could cost is it's really analogous to engine licensing in terms of what it's going to cost. And then that suggests lots of great business models, which, you know, we've developed over the last 10 years or so of how you can make something that's really expensive in a sense, actually affordable for independent developers. Yep, it's plagiarism, David. Yeah, so that's how we deliver it. So sort of putting it back in a bit about the bigger picture. So we're releasing the games stuff, you know, over the next 4 quarters, free hub, release hub, production hub, BizDev hub. But then kind of asynchronously, we're building out the rest of the pieces. So film and TV, we're partnering with Goldfinch because of, again, recognize, you know, doing kind of exactly what we're telling developers to do. We recognize that we're not experts in film and TV, so we're partnering with people that are. And that will release starting Q1. And then fiction and young fiction will be the next one. That's via a company called Coolaby, who have massive penetration in young adult and, well, young adult and teen IPs within the book and well, literature? I don't know what you call it, books, yeah, books and fiction. And that will roll out. Music, toys and games will follow on, but these are the sort of 3 pillars to begin with. So talking a bit about Goldfinch, in 2020, Goldfinch teamed up with Talenthouse via Epic Mega Grant to take UE4 games IP into film and TV, or to try and work out whether there was a route to do that. And in lots of ways, that was a beta test for a lot of what we're doing here at Media Foundry now. So 2 were chosen out of 10 submissions from the industry. 2 were chosen as being particularly filmic. Guilt by Tequila Works and Dragon by Red Thread. And in conjunction with Goldfinch, we then worked up some additional video materials in addition to the game trailer that kind of explained the story a bit more. That was done through storyboarding sourced via Talenthouse. So a whole host of, you know, brief was hosted. Storyboarders came back with their proposals as to how this could be storyboarded for film, and the, you know, the proposal was accepted and turned into a video. I'm just going to show you a little bit of this. It's too long to show the whole thing, but I'm going to talk over it too. So what's interesting is, at the storyboarding stage, they had to extrapolate beyond just the kind of game framework, which was relatively simple, and build out a much deeper and more complex story that would be appropriate for TV.
Betty.
You won't find peace, Edward, not by finding her.
I must. She's the only family I have left. I must find Betty.
What do you call this place? Gravewick?
Gravik. You know you didn't have to come with me, right?
Someone needs to keep an eye on you, Teddy Bear. And you think Betty's here?
She is. She said so in her letter. She's chasing a big story here.
What kind of big story can there be way out here?
I don't know, but we'll find out soon enough.
No one is here, Edward. No one at all.
That's not possible. Betty is here.
So all of that dialogue basically is not in the game. You know, that's dialogue that's been developed to take a game IP into a potential film or TV property. And where we are with that at the moment is the final kind of pitch packages are being put together, and that will be started being pitched by Goldfish over the next 6 months, which, you know, it's been an experiment. That was built in UE4, you know, so quite pretty. The characters, a little bit of work to do there, but nonetheless demonstrates a lot of what we talked about at Epic anyway, about how you can use a real-time engine for way beyond just the game. No, shut up. There we go. All right, so that's kind of the meat of it. First thing, does anyone have any questions? So you all understand exactly what I'm doing. You're at the back. Absolutely, we've got 14 million of them. And so we have a community. Talenthouse has a community built up through their business, which has nothing to do with games, but everything about creators and creatives and artists and videographers and photographers. And that is really why this is possible for us, because there is that enormous pool of talent that we're connected to via the platform.
Brilliant, thank you.
Bendik.
You're looking for beta testers?
Obviously. Kevin.
The data scrape you're doing, is that Steam only at the moment? Or
it's Steam only at the moment. We will do a more comprehensive version, which will be behind the paywall.
Okay. So you're gonna include the Epic Store in that and the Windows Store.
Depends whether we can scrape the data.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, the idea would be to get a much fuller picture. So not just Steam, but Epic.
I might be able to help with that. Let's chat afterwards.
Good man. I mean, ideally as well, it would be nice to try and get some of the first-party data as well. I mean, that's a lot trickier, but there may be ways to do it.
So you've got a line for signing up lots of non-developers. How are you going to get the developers on board? I mean, there are only so many people here.
This is the start of that journey. And so a big part of it is this kind of, is the traditional games development activity, talking to your network, etc. When the free site launches, that will also give you an opportunity to register interest as a potential user. And hopefully the data within the free site itself anyway will kind of help prove to you that this is something valuable anyway and that it's a good idea to know more. So there'll be a number of ways you can get hold of us. My email will come up in a minute as well. I'm absolutely welcome to email me directly to just kind of explore what we're doing and whether it might fit. Okay. Oh, Kev.
So the QA resources you have, how extensive are they?
Well, they're not in-house. It will be to whoever we put it out to. So we'll manage the process for you. We'll tie up. We have relationships with the major keywords, etc. Testronic, and so we'll get preferential rating through those, through relationships, and then manage the process on behalf of the developer. So, but that actually talks to a good point. So what we're not doing is building a service company. So we're not employing hundreds of project managers, QA resources, blah, blah, blah. We're being smart about it and using the technology that's been built within Talenthouse in the back end to coordinate essentially the matchmaking, and then, but rather than matchmaking and running away, we're matchmaking through us, and we'll manage the process on behalf of the developer so that they're not having to manage it themselves. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because the whole advisory thing has always been a huge part of, well, how to work with developers, frankly. Bendik.
And just so I get this, if I got this right, that means that you kind of curate for example, the QA alternatives a little bit.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's cool.
So there is an element of curation here.
Can make the conferences obsolete.
Well, maybe. Nah, because there's always drinking.
You talk a lot about kind of people from non-games coming in and helping out. So there's obviously a bit of a skills gap.
Yeah.
Difficult approaching games from. You got any plans to kind of facilitate skills development through the platform? And
Yes.
mentorship and stuff?
Yes. So we're looking to provide upskilling services for basically our community, traditional community. We will be launching a project to then give them real-time, or those that are interested, game and real-time technology skills. Because you're absolutely right. At the moment, there is this very strong community. There's no doubt that a proportion of them are using, well, they're using Maximier and etc., but also using real-time tech, because they're those sorts of people. But also a large proportion won't be, but would like to. So we're going to kind of manage that part of it as well. At the back, might need the mic.
Thank you. Hey, might be a bit early for this one because it's in the late half next year, but a lot of game development contracts are kind of bespoke. Are you aiming to have a set of standard template agreements?
Absolutely. Yes.
Great.
Yeah. The idea of this is to be as frictionless as possible, or reduce friction. I mean, it's never going to be simple, but yes, templates, absolutely. Okay. Well, that's my email. Absolutely feel free to email me questions, thoughts, or if you just want to explore further. And that's our current register here holding page. So if you just want to kind of generally register, and we'll get back to you with more general launch information as things happen, we'll be more than happy to. And happy to talk to any of you at any time. Kevin.
One more question, Mike. Because obviously I know people who might be looking for buying services. You haven't talked about the service cost of developers because you've not launched that. Do you have a revenue share with the creators? Do you share roughly what that is? So when I'm presenting you to lawyers that I know.
So if you think about the sort of Unreal, I mean, I guess I've nicked it from there. The sort of back end that's sub 5%, but product rev. So after deductions from Steam and first parties, etc. It's that sort of approach. Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening.